Check, check. Check, 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 check. Check, check, check.
Hey Kelly, I have a bunch of receipts from the MSBA thing, but I haven't filled out any forms. Are you sure? Okay. Thank you. All right. All right. Oh yeah, definitely. All right, are we ready? Let's go ahead and come to order. I want to welcome all of you to our October edition of the City of St. Charles School Board meeting. Glad to see all of you here. Looking forward to hearing what many of you have to say. Hopefully you're looking forward to hearing us too. If we can please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we will begin. Item 3.03, Superintendent's Summary and Comments. Dr. Seifert.
Thank you, Josh. Good evening, everybody. Good to see you all. A couple of updates from me. First of all, I want to recognize all of our staff and parents. We don't have a lot of people with us tonight. We don't have actually a recognition tonight because all of our staff, parents, and students, and some of our students are doing some lead conferences, but it's parent-teacher conferences. And so just a shout out to all of our staff and our parents for getting together the last couple evenings and during the day to really connect and hopefully see progress of where our kids are at achievement-wise. And again, as I say, united we rock, and it's neat to see our parents come together. And I personally, I love that we have conferences from pre-K all the way up to 12th grade. And a lot of school districts don't do that, and I think that's outstanding. So communication is the key. A couple other things I want to point out. Our APR score has come out. It's embargoed at this time, so it's not public release, but we're excited about sharing some information with our board. And as we get into the November meeting, this might be a little bit of a shorter meeting, but November's probably going to be a little bit longer. But we have a lot of good information to talk about where we are with our annual performance report. And we'll be sending out some information to our board and then getting ready for that conversation in November. Our building administration has the student scores at this point. They're reviewing and analyzing the data with their staff. And then Dr. Tormla, myself, and our central office team are setting up building meetings with our building admin team to go over not only the APR and the student performance with each school, but also the specific school improvement plans. So we're on the same page moving forward. We're excited about that. Benton Talk podcast. I get it out. You can find that where, Dr. Lewis?
Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, wherever you listen to.
I like when he says that. What's on tap? When's our next one there, Chris? Bennett?
It'll be probably recording 2 weeks.
In 2 weeks? Do we have any upcoming? Do we know who's going to be joining us yet?
It's in the works.
Ooh, it's in the works. Is that like a tease?
Way too much.
Oh, that's a tease. All right. If you haven't listened to it, the podcast is great. We've had the last two versions have had St. Charles West and now St. Charles High. So we're just going to continue to go on with our principals and get some specific information, Dr. Malone, specific information about the district shared on the podcast. So we're excited about that. And then just an update on the construction. Lots of great construction projects. We're getting ready to close some of those out, so we're excited about that. Dr. Brazil, do you have any addition to that specifically?
No, we're moving along on schedule, and we
Good.
really are winding down most of the projects. We have one that is in
Good. But the projects look great, though. Really have enhanced our district. We have a board tour coming up on the 18th. So a
We
week
do.
from tomorrow, where our board spends the day and goes to every school and sees all the great things. So we're excited about that. And we have a CAPS Roadshow on November 7th. So we're excited about seeing our CAPS program. And then in the middle of that, 10:26 is the gala? 10:26 is our Care to Learn gala that we'll probably hear more about tonight. So that is it for me. Great things are happening. I can't believe it's already parent-teacher conferences, so things are going fast, but there's a lot of wonderful things happening in our district, and our kids are growing every day, and it's neat to see. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Seifert. Item 3.04, Board Communications, Board Update. We decided to use this time to talk a little bit about some of our takeaways. Number of the administrators and then another board member, Virgil Beer, and I, we went down to the MSBA conference in Tantera. Well, now it's called Margaritaville, which really sounds strange, having a school district event at Margaritaville. Unfortunate, but
The audience doesn't know how to take that.
I know. There's a reason that I'm not a comedian.
Okay.
So
It was kind of ironic and funny.
it was, yeah. All right. So what I would like to do is kind of go around the horn and hear some takeaways. And obviously we don't need like every single detail, but maybe one or two significant takeaways that some of us had from our sessions. Kelly, you probably didn't think I was going to put you on the spot, but you attended some sessions. Was there any like significant takeaway that you had from the convention? Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Rodney.
I would say the medical marijuana. I think school districts are going to have to grapple with the upcoming use of medical marijuana, especially with these cards and when students are using medical marijuana, how that's going to impact us as well as staff. So, each time I hear it, I take away something different. I've already listened to it. I've already listened to the presentation about it 3 times. I'm planning on going tomorrow to listen to it. And there's a whole legal component,
Yeah.
that's so wrapped up in it that it's going to impact everyone wherever we
Yeah. Yeah. Good take. I'm going to go to my right. Julie.
You can have this just a little
They
different
followed me to that
perspective.
session. No, I'm just teasing. I think like we probably took some, because they talked about staff and like how that would affect staffing, but then from the nursing piece of it, like how does that affect, the use or anything in schools, and just kind of like learning that if it's not FDA approved, which it's not, things like that, that it won't impact us as much maybe as we thought. Hopefully it doesn't. But the other piece is we also went to one on, I don't remember what it was called, but it was about communication. District communication, yeah, and they just talked about the role of their district communication coordinator or everybody has a little different way they use a position such as kind of Chris's position. They use it in different ways with PR, with communications to families, social media, things like that. So it was interesting to learn. They had 3 different districts kind of talk about how they created that position, and I feel like in some ways we learned a lot, and in other ways we're ahead of the game on a lot of things. So
Good. Well, now, if we're ahead of the game on a lot of things, let me thank you, Chris, for helping us stay ahead of the game. Nicely done, sir.
some people, some
Do
districts
what I
didn't even
can.
have that position at this point. So
Good. Excellent, thank you. Charles?
I went to two kind of financial-related sessions, one on the state budget that honestly is just more of the same.
It's always a depressing one, isn't it?
Gloom and doom for the state budget.
It is.
I always keep going, hoping it'll be different. And then one on internal controls, which is always just a good refresher. And can be a little bit scary because, you think about all the various ways that someone can try and defraud you or be stealing from you. And so it's always good to hear that. And then I went to one that the Liberty Public Schools, their superintendent and board president did, talking about innovation and how they had some facility constraints that they initially weren't sure what they were going to do with, and they turned that into a magnet elementary school, but then that was just the beginning of what has become a district-wide emphasis on innovation. So it was an interesting session.
Excellent, thank you. Danielle?
So I must say I'm quite offended that my colleagues have not commented on attending the presentation that I presented along with Josh as a great takeaway.
Dr. Tormala, I haven't had my turn yet.
So,
I haven't.
like
It was
Rodney,
the best session of the weekend.
it was the
Josh
best
Danielle
session
and
I went
Ken
to.
Hall, great job.
Um,
It's in my notes right here.
mhm.
It is. You
Yep.
can read it.
So like Rodney and Julia, I also went to the medical marijuana piece. And the takeaways that I had with that too are marijuana is still illegal at the federal level, and therefore we don't have to allow it. CBD oil, which they brought that up because there's CBD oil shops popping up everywhere. You can buy it at Deerberg, so like whatever, that's still illegal at the state level for us. So there are different issues there. The drug-free, safe workplace and school zones, those are federal laws. And so when you start walking down this path, because marijuana is still illegal at the federal level, school districts have a lot of leeway or maybe not a lot of leeway in how you want to look at it. But if we want to take a hard line with that, we're protected with taking a hard line. So that's a piece, but they did also say that we would want to look at all of our board policies on drug testing, on all of those types of things for employees, students, volunteers, people coming to games, those types of things. So that definitely is an area that I'm sure we'll have more information forthcoming for us as we move forward. I also went to the big steps in district communication. And like Julie, I felt like we were ahead of half of the schools in that room, but the other half, they were really talking about. Obviously, you need to be ahead of social media. You need to have a heavy social media presence in communicating with our families and our community. But then you also need to make sure that you have your templates ready to go when X, Y, or Z types of crisis happen, so that you are ready to respond at a moment's notice. Our communications plan, things like that. So I think that there are areas there that we can take away and continue to refine and boost what we're doing. We went to the general session. Dr. Danielle Dickey was presenting there, and he talked a lot about literacy and the components of what are sometimes missed with teaching of reading. And so one of the things that I really liked about that session is that all of the research that we're doing right now in our district and the professional development that we're doing is the exact same thing. So we're gearing up. This year is our curriculum revision for K-6 communication arts, and those 7 through 12 communication arts will be next year. And that is the basis for everything that we're doing, which is great. It was affirming for me. And then we also went to measuring the impact of social emotional learning that Afton and Melville put on, and so they were just looking at how can they measure impact with social emotional learning pieces with their students in a way that's meaningful and can move their district forward. And it was interesting, they surveyed their families and their families were more concerned with how students were doing socially and emotionally than they were academically. So they had the commitment from their families to go down this path, even if it means that we're not focusing on academics so much that it, for the MAP tests or different things like that, that we have to shore up social emotional learning first before we can really focus on the other. And so I thought that was interesting. And then, of course, we presented on Saturday morning at 8 o'clock. It was awesome. So glad you go. So sad you weren't there to join us. You would have thought it was awesome.
We actually had a pretty good group of people
Yeah.
that came to
For
it.
Saturday morning at 8 o'clock,
good.
it was
It wasn't
decent.
just us.
We didn't play to an empty
It wasn't
house.
just us.
True. Yeah, they came in a little late,
No,
but they were there. They were there. Thank you, Danielle. Jason.
You and I probably had a lot of the same notes, and a little bit of a probably redundant theme here, but the neat thing is our two big rocks in our district are our response intervention process and our student needs, and the student needs piece was all over this conference. And so the neat thing is I got to three different sessions that and they're all having to do with trauma informed, but they're all a little bit different angles. So the social emotional piece, the learning that took place with Afton, their plan is all about self-efficacy, grit, growth mindset, social awareness, and self-management. So that was that piece. And then you got into Ozark superintendent, and they talked about the trauma-informed piece, but almost about crime punishment and kind of not crime. They used the crime and punishment, but pretty much the bullying and the cyberbullying piece and how that processes through from a trauma-informed lens. And then we saw a Missouri trauma-informed panel discussion, and some of my friends from Fort Zumwalt were on that. And really, there was two districts there, one from the Kansas City side and one from the St. Louis side, that really talked about their journeys into really fully becoming trauma-informed, and it was great for us to see those and some of those practices they're doing. And you and I also ended up at the state education initiatives and just highlights, there's a big push and focus on K-12 computer science performance standards and PD. There's obviously the social emotional health, and there's actually a voluntary elementary pilot. There's some sexual harassment training coming in 2021 for grades 7 through 12. Obviously, they talked about the changing U.S. workforce. There's an agricultural education volunteer elementary pilot as well. Talking about teacher externships and teacher retention, and then followed up with some equity conversations. And then I do follow up with Dr. Tormel. I thought the keynote speaker, Dr. Dickey, talking about conceptual understanding of academic language and how that really, when we're talking about sounds and we're talking about how kids are spelling or seeing words, how is that in actual everyday language, and what does that look like? That's how I took it, and I thought it was a really neat presentation and how that affects student achievement. And then, of course, our presentation regarding our EC program was when you sit there as a superintendent, I'm sure you were involved with the program, but when you sit there and you watch our people up talking about not only owning the process, but feeling very, very proud about what we've done, and you see all the things that we've done. And in this case, it was highlighting early childhood education. But I've obviously sat in other presentations, and it's so neat because you're like, that's my district. That's my district presenting, and it's not just. And then when you hear the things that they're saying, it's not just words. We're really living what we're saying. And then when we go to these programs, and you think and you see all the things on trauma-informed or response intervention and things, and you think, or systematic approaches, like, we don't have all the answers, but we're doing a lot of those things. And so when you're sitting there, it really makes you feel like, hey, I want to do more, but it kind of gives you that thought of, man, we are on the right track here. We're doing the right work in our school district, and I know we're a leader in that, so that's exciting. So
Yeah.
I got to hang out with you a little bit.
Yeah, I'm sorry you had to, but it was
Well,
fun.
I say, and
Fun
I joke about
nonetheless.
that. One thing that we've decided as I came on last year as superintendent is, not that we have to go to, because it's good to go to separate things so you can get different things, but it's nice to be able to sit into a couple sessions with Josh, so then we're kind of comparing notes and being able to hear the same thing and have conversations.
Yeah,
That's what I got.
definitely. No.
So can I add to what you said too, Jason? So one of the other things that on the way down to MSBA, and we didn't mention this earlier, we actually got an email, Charles and Jason and I got an email from our architects, and we were able to announce it in our session for early childhood that our architects applied for kind of like the Pinnacle Award for Design in schools and universities. and we are being featured in their portfolio edition for the November edition for American schools and universities, and so that is their pinnacle award for design, which is kind of awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. Very cool.
Great.
Yeah. So yeah, I agree that, you know, the student needs, the trauma informed, that was really all over the conference. You couldn't not go to at least one session that surrounded that. And in the panel, the state panel, you know, one of the things that they said kind of struck me, and they said that, you know what, we hear we need more social workers or we need more specialists and all that. And while that may be true, there will never be enough when you think about it. There will never be enough overall. So they said, how are we Collective Missouri, how are we training our current staff to better handle those situations? And when I hear the professional development going on with it, again, it reinforces that I think we are moving in the right direction there. It's not an easy topic to deal with, but I think we're focused on the right things there. So kudos to the administration for focusing on that. Day one, the board president conference. Actually, a lot of my takeaways from that were not even the main subject of the day. Something came up that may be a topic for later discussion, but so one of the districts next to me, some rural Missouri district, I don't remember where they were from, but they said that they actually have a student panel that once every so often they'll actually have a conversation with the board. And they have their conversations with administration, you know, principals and all that. But the board actually hears from them and could ask questions and things like that. You know, I think somebody had brought up that another district does like a non-voting student member like of the board. So I think those may be things that, you know, how can we continue to hear directly from the students? Are there opportunities in our district to model something like that? I thought that was an interesting thing.
Did you invite Trey to hear that today?
No. What?
Did you invite Trey to be here?
No.
Trey is one of our students at St. Charles West. Are you here to hear that, or were you here for something else?
I'm just here with my sister.
So can I say this, because I know I'm elongating the
Please,
meeting,
no,
but
I have
Trey
no
is
idea
one of our students at St. Charles West, and he's on about, can I go ahead, is it okay? He's on about almost every committee that we have. So he's been on well, I think he likes my committees. I don't know if he goes to your committees, but he goes to my committees. So he was on my calendar committee 2 years ago, correct?
Yes.
And then the whole district safety and security, the committee that we met for and really put a lot of things in place, he was part of that. And he's getting ready to go to school for what?
Planning on getting a Bachelor's of Arts in History with an emphasis in secondary education and then proceeding on to the administration level.
And
Awesome.
so when you talk about bringing kids in to do things like that and really have authentic conversations, that's exactly the kids
The
that
result.
I think about. So, sorry, Trey. That's interesting. You're right in
Thank
the
you.
front row. So
Yeah,
anyway.
that's great. That's
Because
awesome.
he'll probably follow up an email so he's interested. Because I know Trey. Because he'll be like, oh, no, just see me, what do you think? But that's exactly because we can hear and listen. And some of the other school districts, you know, the superintendents do some kind of advisory councils with kids and stuff. So those are things I'm open to as well. But he would be somebody perfect to talk to. Sorry about that, Trey.
Awesome. Thank you, Trey. We can have you step up to the mic if you could. Another thing that came up, which I feel like ever since I've been in the president's seat, I don't think I've been doing it maybe as effectively as possible, but I still think there's an opportunity for us to have somewhat regular board self-evaluations. We've done it, I think, twice, and I would say that we kind of had some kind of a conversation around it, but I don't know if we've ever really move forward with any specific things with that. So I would like us to consider, you know, maybe not the same one that we did a couple of times that have this exact same questions. Maybe we can research other things, but I think, continuing for us as a board to develop and for us to get better and have, kind of a sense of how do we feel we're doing, I think that's important. And then, again, hearing other districts, just talk about various work sessions where it helps them grow relationships, get work done. MSBA, it's kind of far for some people to drive. Is there something that we can do here locally that, again, helps with the work that we do, but also helps with just relationships on the board? So those are some of my big takeaways from the thing.
I like having the district meeting we have once a year with all the St. Charles County and the
Yeah.
city, and that's, when you said that, I immediately was thinking of that kind of activity. It's pretty good.
Yeah, I agree. All right. Thank you all. Appreciate you listening, and hopefully we can now take what we all collectively learned and make a difference with our students for that. All right, 3.05, I don't think we have any audience comments. Trey, last time? Nothing? Okay, just making sure.
All I need to say is, Dr. Siefer, would you please check her inbox?
All right, then 3.06, may I have a motion to amend or adopt the agenda, please?
I move we adopt the agenda.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 4.01, consent agenda. For efficiency, the school board utilizes a consent agenda. Items placed on the consent agenda are routine in nature or are among the many decisions that the board has already determined are in the domain of the administration. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda, please?
I move we approve the consent agenda.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 6.01, policy changes. We didn't have any discussion, I don't think, on this last month, but any thoughts, questions, concerns on the single policy? If not, we do need a motion, please.
I move we approve policy GBCB as presented.
All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Policy changes first reading. Any questions, thoughts, concerns? I guess one question that I had, because it mentions, and maybe it was just late at night and I was tired when I was reading it, but it was mentioning something about when students or families don't have insurance, there are certain things that the school district will be able to provide or help. I was wondering what do we currently do in situations like that? And I know it seemed to be mostly related to like the flu shots and those types of vaccines.
We make them
Yeah.
aware of
Thank you.
Medicaid at the state level.
So, yeah.
It's mostly advisory, we're not picking up.
Yeah, we're not providing anything to them, we're just
Providing.
advising them
It's
of options.
information, making sure they're aware of all the options out there.
Right.
Okay.
And at one point, it said scoliosis screening was no longer either, I forgot what it said, required,
Like
and then somewhere
recommended
else
or
it said that we did it. Is that something we?
They took that out of this.
I thought they, I got to find it.
It's no longer recommended necessarily.
I saw that part about screening for scoliosis no longer recommended, but I thought well, it's there, okay.
If you find it, bring it up next month
Well, and just so
when we
you,
approve it.
just so you know, and I was trying to think of where it said this, when they talk about invasive physical examinations, we don't necessarily perform those. So it's in the policy, but that we would, make sure to let parents know about that, but we don't currently
Yeah, well, let's
do
do
any
that.
invasive physical
Okay,
exams.
sounds good.
Okay.
All right, so since this is a first reading, we do not need a motion. So then we will head to item 8.01, the audit review report.
Yes, so this is Diane Club's once annual visit to the board meeting.
Glad to have
Our
you.
Director of Accounting. Diane does a tremendous amount to work with our independent auditors from Daniel Jones and Associates, and so I'd like to welcome Amanda Sheeran and Jamie Barr. They're going to give us a bit of an overview. You may remember that Mark Janish has been with us many, many times in the past, along with his associate Jacob Barker, and they've both actually left Daniel Jones. And so, right, and so we miss them. Not Jamie or Amanda's fault at all, but we did miss when they left us. Jacob's actually working for Hazelwood Schools, and Mark went to Jefferson College. So they found homes with former clients of theirs. So,
I was going to say, they're...
but we're glad to have Jamie with us to give us a quick overview of the audit.
And we're glad to be here. Thank you. Throughout our report, you'll see a few opinions that we issue, and the first opinion that we issue is on the district's financial statements. We're happy to report that the district received an unmodified opinion. That means it was a clean audit, and that's the best opinion that the district can receive and that we can issue. So good job. The second opinion that we issue is in regards to the district's compliance with the requirements of Missouri laws and regulations regarding budgetary and disbursement procedures, accurate disclosure by the district's records of average daily attendance and average daily transportation of pupils, and other statutory requirements as listed in the schedule of selected statistics that starts on page 45. In our opinion, management's assertions that the district complied with those requirements for the year ended June 30, 2019 are fairly stated in all material respects. And then the last opinion that we issue in the report is in regards to the compliance for each major federal program and internal control over compliance required by the uniform guidance. In our opinion, the district complied in all material respects with the types of compliance requirements that could have a material effect on each of its major federal programs. And again, the district received an unmodified opinion. There were no financial statement nor federal award findings to report this year. The district ended the fiscal year with a total net position of $45,957,055. Of this total, $22,952,618 is restricted, leaving an unrestricted amount of $23,004,437. The district has a unrestricted ending fund balance of 27.91%. And then along with the audit report that we issue, you should also have a management letter. And in the management letter, we identify potential changes that could impact the district in the future due to new GASB statements. And we also have any recommendations for various items that we noted throughout our audit fieldwork. We want to thank you for allowing Daniel Jones and Associates to perform the district's audit. The district's staff members were a pleasure to work with. Thank you, Diane, for being so organized, and your staff. We really appreciate how organized it was laid out for us when we came for field work. Are there any questions? Yes.
And I'm just curious, the differences that you found in our school district in relation to others.
Differences as far as how things are done, or?
How things are at any level that.
Nothing has stuck out. I mean, usually when we ask for things, you know, a report might be called something different, but overall, the big picture is it's pretty similar to other districts.
You just caught my eye, the very last thing about gift cards.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a, I mean, that's.
It's not a finding, it was just a note that we made. It's an IRS requirement that if you provide gift cards to employees, not only should you be keeping a log of who the gift cards are given to, but if it's given to an employee, it should actually be on their W-2s.
So with regard to getting a log of who they're given to, that is our guidance. It just did not get done, did not get completed. So we'll double check to make sure that gets completed.
We don't do a lot of Well, I guess,
No, primarily through our wellness program.
Oh.
We do a significant number of Amazon gift
Oh, that's
cards
right.
for the wellness program, but that's the only large area where we do them.
yeah, because I noticed I didn't get one.
And we generally avoid them if we can.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions?
We do need your approval if you would be
Yep.
so kind.
We need a motion, please.
I moved to approve the 2018-2019 audit review report as presented.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you. Thank you so much for your report
Thank
and
you
your
so
work.
much.
We appreciate it.
And
Yeah.
thank you, Diane.
But Diane, yeah,
She's off the hook till next October.
thank you. Thank you for everything you do,
Thank you,
Diane.
Diane. Thanks for making us look good.
And Charles, thank you as well. And please thank your entire staff. We really do appreciate
I'm
everything.
very proud of our business office.
All right, 8.02, Care to Learn. Are we ready to go black and white?
All right. So I'm Ellen Heitzig. I am a district social worker as well as the co-liaison for our Care to Learn chapter here in the district. And I just came to do my yearly update. And so all of you are familiar with Care to Learn, obviously. We meet the emergent health, hunger, and hygiene needs of our students. And I just wanted to give you some facts of what we are doing specifically in our chapter. So when we became a chapter in 2014-15 school year, an impression is every single time that we help a student. So we had 86 impressions then. The following year we had 894. In the 16-17 school year we had 5,668. The following school year we had 5,953. And then last school year we had 5,272. This school year to date we already have 2,168 impressions. And that was when I did it on, what is today? So on the 8th. So overall, I added it all up. We have filled over 20,000 impressions since we became a chapter. So that is every single time we have met a health, hunger, and hygiene need for one of our students in the district. And that can be anything from our backpack program, which we supplement, as well as transportation to a medical appointment, lice kits, as well as shoes. We recently got a request for Blackhurst. Some of the kids are not remembering their shoes for PE, and so we were able to the PE teacher has stocked her back room with some sizes specifically for the kids, and she fulfills those needs for the kids so that they check them out and then they have a chance to participate in PE. So that's another thing that we've been doing. So these needs are always met within a 24-hour time period for the most part, unless I'm out sick or something like that. But how are these being met is that over the last 4 or 5 years, we have raised to date, as of today, over $400,000. And that is through community support, sponsorships, as well as our annual gala, which I'll hit on in a second. We've had small fundraisers. We just had Music to Their Ears by Rob Biddick, which was this last Sunday. He has raised over $12,000 for us single-handedly over the last couple of years, and that's just a community member saying, I want to do something for our district kids. And he has a music festival out at Glenmark Farms, and he is actually our recipient for our Lori's Legacy of Love Award this year. We also bring in over $1,000 in payroll deduction now, too, each month. So I would like to read a couple success stories for you all. Care to Learn brought a new bed for a second grade Coverdell student whose bed was so broken down that he had no longer been able to use it. He spent most nights sleeping on a sofa and often came to school sleep deprived and very emotionally dysregulated. He loves his new bed and is able to get the rest he needs, which has helped him be more attentive in class and emotionally regulated.
Another one is, this year I had a student who was in need of glasses. He is a student who loves school and comes to school each day with a positive attitude. This student is coming to school wearing broken glasses. The glasses did not have arms on them to assist in keeping the glasses on the student's face. Each time he tried to read, write, he would look down and the glasses would fall off his face. This student never complained about this one time. I contacted home about the glasses and they were unable to afford a new pair. We worked with Care to Learn and they were able to get him an eye appointment and paid for new glasses. The look on his face when he came to school with brand new glasses was unforgettable. I got one more for you. This one stuck out to me. Care to Learn has helped Monroe Elementary in a heart full of ways. One family no longer qualified for free and reduced lunch due to a small raise that the single father had three received at work. Food has always been very important to these children who previously experienced trauma in their lives prior to living with their father. And when they were so overdrawn on their lunch account that they had no food choices at lunch but to receive the sun butter and jelly, it sent the children into a tailspin for the rest of the afternoon, affecting their emotional states, which therefore impacted their learning. Care to Learn came to the rescue and helped recover the negative balance on their lunch accounts so Dad could get caught up and do his best to keep them in the positive. The money helped the children have choices at lunch for food they preferred. As a result, they were ready to approach their afternoon learning with great enthusiasm. So those are just some of the things we're doing in the district. And with the help of your support at the ball this year, I will pass these out, but our ball is the black and white ball this year at Ameristar. Last year we raised close to $60,000. I think it was at $58,000. And that goes straight back to our students in the district. So I will leave these, with Julie. And then we would love your support at the ball. We would love to have the board have a whole table there this year. Any questions about Care to
Join me
Learn?
at the ball, please. Join us.
We'll be there. We're lots of fun.
Yeah, but usually you guys have your table, and although I got to sit next to our esteemed county executive last year.
So I don't know if you want to hear this or not. So my children also go to Blackhurst. So it's funny, this week we were getting ready for school and my youngest is in kindergarten, and those of you who have met her, she's a handful. And so we were getting ready for school and I said, oh, you have PE today. You need to wear your tennis shoes. Go pick out which tennis shoes you want to wear. She goes, no, Mommy, I want to wear these. Miss Rosonia has shoes for us for PE. Like we had a slight altercation heading to school because she wanted to wear her fancy shoes.
Yep.
But they know, the good news is they know that they're
They know it's
there.
there,
They know
which
that
is
that option is
Yes,
available.
Miss Rosonia filled me in. Not necessarily that case, but some of
I'm
the kids
sure
are
it was
catching on
based
that she has pretty shoes and cool shoes. So they know they're cared for, and that's the big piece. So, any other questions? Well, thank you. I appreciate the time. We'll see you at the ball.
Thank you, Ellen. So we do not need a motion for that. It doesn't look like, but yes, please. These are always fun. And what Ellen did mention is that we're going to celebrate the return of Earl Draper.
Yes, that is true.
He is going to be hosting the event and providing the music too, right?
Yep.
So.
Really?
Come check him out, DJ Dre.
Can I just add that, of course, we just saw Diane, but then also Ellen. I mean, those are two specific, perfect examples of just the hardworking staff members that we have in this district. And she took over Care to Learn. That happened way before I got here. But I mean, that's not her only job. I mean, obviously that's part of it.
It's
but
a huge
it is unbelievable what she has done. And I just want to thank you, Ellen, for everything.
Yeah, thank you.
And Diane's the same way. Tina's back there. I mean, we just have extremely talented and hardworking people. So, thanks, Ellen.
All right. 8.03, program review, homeless.
Homeless, all right. And a little bit of this, I won't go too much into the Care to Learn since Ellen already did, but basically our homeless program is aligned with McKinney-Vento Act. And so basically the district provides services to homeless children and youth. So when we talk about homeless, we're not only talking about your what you would think of as a person that just doesn't have a roof over the head, but we're talking about people that share housing with other families because they've lost their housing or they have hardship. families that are living in hotels and motels, shelters, maybe in a, not like a trailer court, but like an RV park, things like that. We have many emergency shelters in our district, like Youth in Need for students, Bridgeway, I can't think of the other one. Anyway, we have many shelters in our district. So we do have a lot of families that come in and come out of our district who are considered homeless. And so the McKinney-Vento Act actually is put into place to help address the challenges with that, because those people that come into our district, they don't necessarily have a lease or a contract on a house or anything that they can really provide to us that show us that they actually have permanent residency here. So our job as a district then is to identify families when they come in and enroll. It is something that they do mark on our enrollment sheets if they don't have housing or they've lost their housing or doubled up. That helps identify them. But our social workers, like Ellen, and our counselors, and our registrars, our principals, all of these people at the building level help identify these families when we come in and these students, so that they then contact my office and we help identify if they're homeless or not. So if they are homeless, it kind of forgoes a lot of the enrollment pieces temporarily. Our job is to immediately enroll them per the McKinney-Vento Act, and then we follow up with trying to get as much information and as much of the enrollment process completed after they begin. So for instance, if they are coming from an area that maybe had a hurricane, they're not going to have things like immunization paperwork and things like that. So we kind of look towards getting that information on the back end because our job under the Act is to get them enrolled immediately. So basically, that's kind of the definition, and that's kind of the purpose of the law. The purpose of the law is to make sure that these children are receiving free and appropriate public education, either in the district in which they're currently residing, that they lay their head down at night, or that if they are coming from another school district and they're in our district because of hardship, that we are transporting them back to their school of origin. So we might have a family that was living in Hazelwood for however many years. They lose their housing due to hardship. They're living with the family here. And so our job is to decide if the best interest for that child is to actually stay in the district they've been living in and that they're used to and that they have friends in, because maybe this is temporary, or is the best interest for them to be here in our district where they're laying their head down at night. So that's kind of where the decisions get made. And if we decide Hazelwood is the best place for them to stay, then we would share transportation with the other district in order to allow them to continue with their school. So basically, that's kind of the gist of the program. So to kind of go into some of the actual pieces in some of the data here. All right. So when we kind of looked at the program of Allen, what we would help determine if we're kind of what we're doing in the homeless program, we looked at like the number of students that we currently have, that we've had in the years past. If you look maybe, I don't know, previous to 2017, so like 2016 and before, our numbers might have been quite a bit higher, and that was because under previous law, our foster students and our homeless students were all included in that number. Well, when the Every Student Succeeds Act was created or put into law in 2016, then the foster kids came out of that. They're no longer under McKinney-Vento. They have their own process. So our numbers might look a little bit smaller because it's just simply homeless now. We look at timelines for enrollment process, attendance and entry dates and withdrawal dates of homeless students, services that we provide for them, and then compliance with our state and federal laws. So, all right, so if we kind of look at just the data, in 2017 to 18 school year, we had 50 students that we identified as homeless within our district, and that was at any time. Chris, back up at the top, it's before that first chart. 50 students at any time during that school year. The following year, last year, it went up to 66 students. So not on one specific day, but over the course of from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, we had 66 students that at some point in the year were qualified under homeless. As of just this October, on October 1st, we ran our numbers, and we currently had 44 students enrolled as homeless. That number has already changed. So, you know, it changed. I think we were up like 3 a few days ago, and then we were down a couple. So that number's constantly changing. So basically, if you look at the chart, most of our students are doubled up. And so when we do have a lot of families that actually enroll in our district under affidavits because they are living with another family. So then basically my office has to kind of dig a little deeper and figure out, are they living with another family because like mutual benefit, maybe they're just sharing housing and sharing bills and it's mutual benefit, or is it homeless because they are there because of a hardship, or maybe they lost housing or got kicked out of the house or got kicked out of a hotel or something like that. So we have to dig a little deeper. So 32 is not just the families that we have doubled up with other families in the district, but they're the families that we call, that fall under the homeless category as doubled up. We have a couple motels in our district that families are living in. Some of these are also families that live in motels outside of our district, and they might be being transported back to our district because we are their school of origin. 5 families in shelters, or 5 students in shelters. Again, some of the shelters that we have in our district, they might be there 2 or 3 weeks and then they're gone. So again, we talk with these families about, is it a safety issue? For instance, we have a shelter for battered women in our district, and so we ask the question when those students come to enroll, is there a safety issue in which they can't go back to their school of origin? So then we enroll them in our district. But often we do transport them back because they may only be here for 2 or 3 weeks. So students automatically qualify for free lunch and any Title I services. So those Title I services are things like, you know, tutoring, reading and math help, things like that. They also qualify for free lunch. So when they come in, it's immediate. So Emily Humphreys, who's the executive secretary for student services, she does a lot of this behind the scenes work. So she's working with our registrars, with Chartwells, with transportation, with cab companies, trying to make sure that they're getting the services they need, that they're signed up for free lunch, that we get transportation settled very quickly, and all of that information. Sorry. So some of the things that we do as a district to make sure that we know that we're still in compliance with the law, we have annual meetings with stakeholders. So we meet with all of our secretaries at least twice a year at our secretaries meeting, and we have a part of that. Emily and I have a part of that where we actually discuss just the homeless procedures and make sure that everybody kind of knows the process. We meet with the food service representatives, Title I coordinators, social workers. Heather Sheets, who's our federal programs coordinator, she's part of that. Nurses, administrators, we have a meeting at least annually to kind of really talk about the coordination of all of our services. Registrars and Emily and I really work with transportation and cab companies. Honestly, Emily could work on that all day long, every day. The getting kids to and from school is very, very time consuming, and there's a lot of issues with cabs being late and traffic and this, that, and the other, and she spends probably 50% of her time really working on just the transportation to and from. Because as you saw in this program eval, our biggest attendance problem, the biggest subgroup of kids that have poor attendance is our homeless population. It was worse last year than it was the year before. But again, I think it'll be better this year because we really have Emily kind of tackling some of those, making sure kids are getting here on time, making sure that we know where families are. And she has almost constant communication with our families, our registrars, our schools to make sure that our kids are here. And so when they're not here for a couple of days, that gets tackled a lot quicker. So let's see.
Do we not have migrant?
Do we not have what?
Migrant.
Migrant is different.
Oh,
It's different. That is handled with Danielle's department through Heather. Heather works with the migrant.
And so we have had years that we have had migrant students, but we don't have to report out and we don't receive funds unless we have 10 or more students that qualify. In the last few years, we have not. Yeah, probably I'd say the last five years, we haven't been able to have enough kids to hit that threshold.
And just as a piece of that, when you talk about getting funding, we don't necessarily get specific funding to help support the McKinney-Vento Act. So where we can use some set-asides with title funds, we don't necessarily get money for homeless transportation, homeless education, like things like that. So that's money that the district is spending, I guess, out of their own pockets. I don't know how. Yeah.
McKinney-Vento
Mm-hmm.
Act
Mm-hmm.
doesn't give us any money, just tells us.
Correct.
That's correct.
Correct. So, and I'll get to that in a minute about how maybe some ideas on how to save a little bit of money because it is it's a high cost, in order to be able to make sure we're educating all of our students. But basically though, whenever we do have to support a student who's either not living in our school district, who's attending our school district, or vice versa, that cost of transportation gets split by the district their school of origin is what we call it. Their school of origin or their district of origin, and our district will split the cost of transportation. So if you see there, if you look at the cost of homeless transportation, last school year, the total amount of money we spent on homeless transportation was $123,700, just about. We reimburse other districts about $72,800 of that, and then we've gotten reimbursement from other districts of almost $50,000. And then some considerations.
We're paying more out than we're getting in.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yes. So some of it is we're still waiting on some reimbursement from other districts. Okay. And then some of it is because we have a lot of shelters and we have a lot of, right.
Other facilities.
So they're coming to us and we have them where some other districts may not have a single shelter in their district.
Yeah.
It causes, it causes a little bit of difference there. So anyways, one of the nicest things is that we do have, as I say, it takes a village to raise a child. We have counselors attending annual meetings, annual trainings, really discussing families, working with Neighbor Helping Neighbor, Care to Learn. The community that I'm in with special services directors, coordinators, we meet on a regular basis, several different levels of meetings. We have K-Kids, which is St. Louis, St. Charles area. We have just our student services meetings. We meet with just the county. We have lots of different support between districts in order to kind of like help really make sure that the resources for these families, that they have those. So all school staff, this was new last year. This is part of, again, our requirements under the law, and according to DESE, all staff now receive annual training on the McKinney-Vento Act. So like as a teacher, I never had heard of the McKinney-Vento Act, but that's part of the Safe Schools training that they do at the beginning of the year. There's a short training there on the responsibilities of the district, and just kind of a small training there that's required. We also have board-approved processes and policies that also include the resolution of disagreements about eligibility and placement. So if we think that maybe a family is not necessarily homeless, or there's a dispute about whether or not they are homeless, we have a process that we go through. In the past, I think since I've been here, we've may have had one or two families that have tried to enter the dispute process, but in the past 3 years, maybe one, and it wasn't even a legit reason to. So I feel like we're doing a good job making sure that the families that we're calling homeless are, and I feel like if they aren't, I mean, we have had to give the dispute process to families, but they haven't actually entered into it because we have information to back up the fact that we don't think they're homeless. So, let's see, a couple more things. So some evidence of positive impact. Again, neighbor helping neighbor. I know you guys are probably familiar with that. We've talked about it, several years in a row, but that's really just to help families break the cycle of living from crisis to crisis. They have provided sheds at every building where there are supplies such as toothbrushes and shoes and things like that. They keep stocked. All of those are actually supported by different organizations such as Rotary, different churches. They fill those sheds for us. And then the neighbor helping neighbor service coordinators walk alongside our families. They're referred by our counselors. They walk alongside our families, and they really help connect them with resources. Care to Learn, you just learned, again, more about Care to Learn. And then we have our local backpack programs that really help support our families. I added a little blurb there at the end about the position of executive secretary being hired in July of 2019, which has really, really, really helped, I believe, provide more support to our families because she spends most of her day just working on homeless and foster. She initiates phone calls to families. She spends a lot. She's that person that if we do identify a family, she calls and she really works with them on whether they need transportation, what kind of other resources can we help them with, what are they doing to try and find housing. She really has long, good conversations.
Question.
Yeah.
What are her qualifications when you hired her?
Well, we stole her from Charles, so she came out of our business department. So she's been a real great support there as far as the billing and all of that with taxis and cabs and things like that. But honestly, she just had good relationships. She had a lot of different jobs where she had really good relationships with people. She had worked previously at a college as
She worked in student services.
Student services, like at the college level, working with student life, things like that.
I would say that what we saw from her and what we're seeing right now in that job is it's a lot of personal conversations and communication. Also having the balance with having some empathy for parents and for kids in certain situations, but also being able to keep that fine line or that line of what we can do to help people, make sure that we're not being taken advantage of either. There's a fine line there. She has that knack for that, as well as extremely organized. That position has to be, there's a lot going on and a lot of different families she's working with. And so I think that's what we saw not only in Charles's office, but as she's moved over, really that people skills as well as a very high organized. And I want to make sure we note this, not that anybody's questioning it, but that position, we basically filled it after a year with not having it. And we just feel like that's a growing issue and a huge need. And we really didn't have anybody even on the student needs side supporting Julie. So this is a big piece of that.
And she's a 100% homeless program.
No. She is an executive. Her position is executive secretary.
Yeah.
For student needs, student services.
She does homeless. She does foster. She does our local tax effort. She does actually all of our transportation in the entire special ed student services department that is not our district provided transportation. So she's even working with any of our students with special needs that are needing like a cab or specialized transportation.
Okay.
She does.
What's her name? What's her name?
Emily Humphreys.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, her honestly, when you say that, I mean, those are her qualifications. They're not. She's just so. Organization's huge. I've never. McKinney-Vento law and act is such a it's gray. There's so much gray to it. Like, it's black and white, but there's so much where you really have to build relationships and you really have to kind of know the right questions to ask, because sometimes it's not real clear if a family is truly homeless or not. And so she really knows how to dig deep. She's just amazing. Oh, she also works with, she does all of our nursing budgets and works with our nurses, same with counseling. Anything that's not special education that's under my umbrella.
Wow,
So-
did she
Which is
realize
a-
what this looks like?
Which is a pretty wide, umbrella. And just, we've discussed this before, but it's probably been probably a little bit of time. We felt like that position before, we had a person in that position that was doing some of the early childhood things too before we went to an actual building. We thought that position could go to early childhood and be basically the secretary there and continue to do the student services. And we didn't even get to the school year, and that person really struggled mightily, and we actually had to change that situation out. So then we went a whole year to see what we could do, and it just, we weren't even being able to get to a lot of things that the way we needed to in her department for the student services piece, and that's why we went back to that position. And it's been, I believe it's a well-needed position, and she does a lot of things. You're probably not even giving her justice, because there's a whole list of things that she does in that position for student services, because Julie's got two specific sides to her job. So.
Yeah, and we really are, I mean, just, and again, it sounds silly, but the transportation piece is just huge too. And we have some, issues with not showing up on time or this situation. She handles everything. With our foster students, we have best interest determination meetings with Children's Division. She's able to sit in on those now. She's just amazing. So I listed for you all of the things she's doing for us. All I can say is, like, she is super busy. Like, she is super busy, and I think she leaves at the end of the day with a list still for the next day. So, and she has learned that law inside and out, and it is amazing to me, like, that she picked up on it so quickly and produced a bunch of processes that were truly needed, and she is just super organized. So, some of the things for future improvement, and she again helped me with some of these, especially continue to do high quality professional development for staff. We still struggle sometimes with people walking into buildings, and just kind of with our buildings knowing the right questions to ask, and following processes there. So we need to continue really trying to help them understand the McKinney-Vento Act and the rights and the needs of those kids. Collaboration, just continuing that. We have so many resources in our district, and I know part of our CSIP goal was really trying to make all of our staff and all of our families aware of the resources we have so that we can utilize them appropriately. So just really honing in on trying to collaborate with these people and knowing what resources we need and using them. Enrollment forms for families. The state wants us to annually ask now. It became part of the enrollment form a few years back when they first enroll, whether they're homeless or not, foster or not, different situations. But now they're wanting us to annually provide a document or something in which those questions are asked of all of our families. So we are working with Alex Green to kind of get that into our re-verification over the summer, how you go on and you re-verify your residency to get that added. Looking at transportation, and I know, like, Charles's group of professionals and my group of professionals across the county have been trying for years to figure out how, as districts in the area, can cut down on the cost of transportation. I mean, we've had businesses trying to put together plans because it's a costly thing to transport these kids, and you're not usually transporting them within your boundaries, which means you typically don't use your own buses for it. So they've put together all kinds of different scenarios in which to try and cut down on costs. So I would just say, one of the things we can work on is continuing that, maybe how we can even cut down on some costs in our own district. For instance, you know, if you had a kid at Red Roof Inn, that might be on the west and Jefferson and Monroe, but what if the kid's homeschool is Coverdell? How could we possibly use our own buses somehow to pick those kids up rather than cabbing them as we are now because they're not within that attendance zone? Just ideas like that. National Conference for Homeless Liaison might be a helpful way. What we have at the state level is typically what we talk about is our group, is our like St. Louis, St. Charles group. So when we go to our state conferences, a lot of the information is the same because they're trying to reach out to rural areas that may not have connections with each other. So, and then applying for grants. So no, we do not get any money, but there's a 2-year cycle for grants for homeless, and we Heather and I, Danielle's Heather and I looked at it 2 years ago and tried to apply for the grant because part of it is what are we using, you know, some of our Title I. So she got involved and helped me try to write this grant. We got denied. There's not very many districts, I don't believe, that actually get the grant. You have to have a pretty high number of homeless students, high percentage of homeless students. But I think we can keep continuing to try to apply for some of these grants. And they want to know like what you were going to use the grant money for. So some districts are using it for extra social workers or things like that to try and help cover the cost of some of the staff. So I don't know, that I guess not give up on trying to get some grant opportunities for those families. So, or for our district to support those families.
I just have one. I'm trying to understand the purpose of this program. Okay, is it strictly to make a smooth transition for homeless kids?
It's trying to keep them like in stable settings.
Okay.
We're not transferring the district to district, school to school, and creating a disruption in their education.
Okay.
Is really what
And it's not long. I mean,
it is.
that's the biggest piece.
And Danielle talks about this all the time. These kids that we have from the beginning to the end do much better on our testing and our MAP scores. So I think it's just, you know, trying to keep them in a stable situation where they do perform better and they do have a better education.
So basically, it involves the help of the social workers, counselors, and student services in general, right?
Yeah, I mean, our registers are a huge part of it, our principals. You know, it's a village. Our transportation department's part of it a lot of times. Chartwell's, I mean, it really is everybody.
HR does enrollment, so they're part of it. There's a lot of people who get involved with homeless kids.
All of us are involved in some form. I mean, you go to school, you got teachers, counselors, it could be an OASIS student, everybody's doing resources, implement that's what they need.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thoughts, comments? All right, entertain a motion.
You're welcome.
I move to approve the homeless program review as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
30 minutes.
Opposed? All right, thank you. District financial report, Charles.
Well, unlike Mrs. McClard, I remember that Mr. Thorne has a flight at 4 in the morning, so I will try and go a little bit more quickly.
Thank you. It's an interesting program.
Actually, I asked questions just because I knew that
So your first page, as usual, is the healthcare trust. You can see we're still continuing to run just north of $2.5 million in balance there, so I don't have any real concerns at this point with where we are in regard to the healthcare account. The September.
Sorry, just related to that, I know we were happy that with the health plan for the coming year that we weren't going to have to make any changes. That received well.
Oh, I think so far, yes, it has been. And we're getting ready to start open enrollment next week. And so those who have thus far avoided knowing that will find it out pretty quickly. For September, Nothing out of the ordinary here. You'll see we still have no county revenue, but that's not unusual for this time of year. Remember, the only two things that really come in county revenue are fines and forfeitures, and then state assessed roads and utilities, and neither of those typically are here by now. Overall, you see state revenues beginning to come in. Federal revenue is always paid to us in arrears, and we have to ask for it. And then most of the local revenue at this point is in sales tax. So we continue to drop our fund balances, and as you know, that will continue through about mid-December when we start getting escrow payments from mortgage companies. And so the year end looks much the same. You'll see we're still spending significantly more in Fund 4 than we're taking in, and that's the remaining bond revenues from the 2017 bond issue. As Jason alluded to earlier in the meeting, that's going to come to an end fairly quickly. Fund 3, you'll notice we've made one interest-only payment of $960,000 this year. You'll see some significantly larger activity in the spring. So we make a principal payment and as well as interest in the spring, and we're going to kind of double that up this year as part of the refinancing that we'll bring to you for your official approval next month as we refinance the 2014 bond issue. And then overall, we're still hovering around between 22 and 23% in a projected ending fund balance for this current fiscal year. What questions can I answer?
So with the bonds coming to an end, but yet we have 28 million in Fund 4 right now, do you like to keep a certain amount in Fund 4, or we are projecting to spend down that 20?
Yes, we'll spend some of that money down, and so by the time we're done, you'll see that Fund 4 balance is really going to be much, much smaller. We still owe quite a bit of money on our projects that are ongoing.
Mike, you have something?
No, not at all. Yes, a motion, please.
I move to approve the financial report as presented.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. May I have a motion to adjourn, please?
I so move.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Thank you all. Appreciate it. Everything.
Have a good trip.
Yes.
Thanks,
Sure,
everybody.
what?
Thank you for joining us.
Mm-hmm.